Okay, Coach, taking a look at the guards for the third part of our season preview. The first thing that you kind of really have to address and discuss is, one familiar face that's no longer in the backcourt, and that's Luquan Choice, obviously a guy who made a tremendous impact while he was here at Lincoln Memorial. So kind of just talk about what the team might look like without Luquan Choice there and just kind of the impact his absence will make.
Not as good. I can probably not as good without him out there. He was. I go home every night and cry that Lou's not here. He's been my security blanket for 4 years. That's why he was the all-time leader here in minutes played, and he just was a guy that affected the game and affected winning on both ends of the floor at such a high level. So we miss him every day, and obviously thrilled that he's doing well in Germany. But it changes things, and it doesn't. Obviously kidding. I mean, we can be as good. It'll just be different. And that's you don't ever replace. Greatness. When we didn't have another Vinny Bailey, we didn't have another Jarrell Simmons, not having another Luquan Choice. You have to evolve and figure out what the strengths are with this team, with the personnel that you have at hand, and so we will miss him. He was great. I would take him for another 5-year run if that was legal by NCAA standards, but it's not. I checked, and so. We have to move on, and this team will be different, but we'll miss him. I miss him, in terms of obviously his play, but certainly miss him as a human. I think it's great. I get to see most of the returning guys, or most of the guys that graduated are in grad school. So I see Paul, and I see Devin, and I see Webb, and I see Hunt, and all those guys that practice. Javier, they all come by practices and get to see those guys. So just get to talk to Lou on the phone, but it's obviously we're thrilled for his success and not at all surprised by what he's doing over in Germany.
Well, the transition should be made a little bit easier, though, because if you really look at the group as a whole, it's aside from him leaving, which is a huge loss, the rest of the guard group is mostly intact, and then you brought in a bunch of new players that should, create a lot of depth at that position and versatility. So talking about the guys that return, they played a big part in last year's team. Starts with Trayvon Shaw, Cornelius Taylor, and Deshaun Patterson, all guys who played vital roles for the team's run to the Final Four last year. So kind of talk about those three guys and how they've looked so far this year.
Well, I think, all three are better. I think, Trayvon is healthier. He really battled, knee issues last year. I think we talked about, he had fluid drained, 8 or 9 different times during the year, where he'd have fluid build up, and he was, he's a really tough kid. He put off surgery till the end of the season and battled through it, and like you said, was a key cog for us in terms of reaching the Final Four and win the region and the league and all that. And I think he looks healthier, he looks quicker, he looks bouncier. He's playing at a really high level. Seems to be more efficient, and that's again, he's a year older, a year more experienced, and he's doing. Trayvon's going to do what he does. He's just doing what he does better, which is what you want. He's got a couple strengths, and we've got to take advantage of those strengths. But he's doing the things he does well at a higher level. Scoot, I think, is better as well. I think he's been better playmaking. He's shooting the ball a little more consistently. He made, I think, 59, 63s last year as a freshman. It wasn't like he didn't make shots, but I think he's understanding shot selection better and what we're looking for. And again, his play off ball screens and making the right reads is improved. I think his ability to finish plays in the paint and finish shots around the rim is better. And so overall, I think he's vastly improved. And Deshaun's a guy that had a great finish of the year. He was down the stretch run. We played Catawba to really kind of kickstarted him, but we played Catawba to try to win the league and on the road in a very difficult place to play. And I think he got 22 in that game, and that kind of kickstarted him into the NCAA tournament. And he played really well. Obviously, was indispensable for us. And against Queens, when you look at I think 16 points the last 10 minutes, and made a bunch of big plays. Deshaun's a guy that some guys, the bigger the moment, the smaller they become. Deshaun's the antithesis of that. He's bigger the moment, the better he plays. He loves the big stage, and he's a guy that can really score the ball. He's a terrific ball handler. He's highly skilled. For him, and I think really the key for all these guys is improvement on the defensive end, because they had that wasn't a main responsibility for any of those three last year. That was kind of deferred to Lou and Paul or other guys, and now they're going to have to somebody's going to emerge, whether it's one of those three or other guys we'll talk about as a lockdown defender. And that's because, again, the teams in this league, everybody's got a guy or two, and the good teams have multiple guys that are elite scorers, and you need guys that can lock guys down and do a great job individually on the defensive end. So, but in terms of all that, I think all three of them are better and should have need them to have really good years, because they're going to have a lot more responsibility on their plate than they did last year.
And we talked about kind of the depth of that group, and one guy that really stands out that's going to add to the versatility and depth of that group is Josh Odom. Comes in for 1 year, 6'6" wing. We know about his playmaking ability, what he did at Limestone when he was last in action in college basketball. So talk about what the impact he could have on the team this year.
I think Josh is a guy that is really talented. He's unselfish. I think he's a guy that brings great versatility. He can guard 4 positions, 1 through 4, with ease. He's a guy that is competitive. I think he's a guy that makes guys better. He's a very willing passer. You almost have to get on him to take more shots. I think he'll as he gets rhythm back, he's going to be an efficient scorer. I don't know if he's a guy that's going to go and average 20, but he's a guy that fits well with the other pieces around him. I think he complements the guys around him well. But he's a great guy, and he just makes your team better when you got a guy that is that talented and that versatile. It just makes a huge impact on your team, because he can plug so many holes on both ends of the floor.
Well, and then we talk about the way this team has really looked the last few years. You haven't been led in scoring by forward since Vinny Bailey. Guards have really kind of dominated the flow of play for this team the last few years. When you're going to have a lot of options in the backcourt, particularly if you want to go to some small ball lineups, Cameron Calhoun, Romeo Ferguson are two guys that really stand out that could have significant playing time as small ball 4. So talk about those guys and their role they might have on the team this year.
Yeah, for sure. I think both those guys are guys that are swings. They're guys that can really in that same small forward bucket. But they can certainly play together. They can play separately. I mean, really, if you want to get technical, Dorian probably fits in that small forward bucket as well. But the way we play, I mean, we really don't focus as much, on positions. It's more of, getting your best guys on the floor and having, you got to have a team at this level. I think basketball in general has evolved into this, but certainly in Division II and in the South Atlantic Conference, you want a team that's as versatile and flexible as possible, because you see. You run the gamut in terms of style of play, right? I mean, you got teams that really downsize and play small and fast, and Newberry comes to mind. Coker does that a lot. You got teams that play with more of a traditional, 2 big men, and you have to be able to match that as well. And so for sure, I think we didn't play small ball as much last year, and because I think. When Dorian went out, Dorian's the key cog and all that. Dorian's the guy that makes that work, because his ability to guard 5s and his playmaking at the 5, his ability to defensive rebound, he's a guy that makes that work. And so we didn't do it as much last year, but I would expect that we'll have that option available to us. And Cam's a guy that's been here for 3 years, and he's just worked and kind of is solid. He's tough and he's smart. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't really care about stats. He's just trying to help the team win. He's competitive. He's a really good defender. We do need. That's an area we've got to find some guys that will evolve into lockdown defenders like we discussed, and he's a guy who has that capability at 6'4" with long arms. Romeo Ferguson, the guy 6'4", can really play the point and play 1 through 4. He's got great quickness. He gets downhill. He's active defensively. Both those guys will help us this year. I don't think there's any question about it. We're going to rely on those guys, and again, having guys in those mid-sized guys in that small forward bucket gives you flexibility, allows you to play some different ways, and both those guys will, I think, see significant playing time this year.
two other true freshmen that have a chance that are in the mix to really get into that backcourt discussion are Alex Dalling and Cam Henry, two guys that right now do a lot different. We don't see traditionally a lot of true freshmen get into the lineup, be able to work into the lineup here at Lincoln Memorial. But, what have you seen from those two guys, and what role could those two guys play on the team?
Well, Cam's another guy that fits right in that small forward bucket. He's 6'5" and is a guard, but he can play up, and I think he can guard multiple positions. Offensively, he can play multiple positions. He's a versatile player. It's really for him, obviously, making sure that if we don't redshirt him, that he's going to get enough minutes, and to, how those are going to be dispersed or allocated. We'll know kind of coming out of Butler, but he's a guy that whether it's this year or down the line is going to be a great player at LMU. He really is. He's skilled. He's cerebral. He's competitive. He wants to be good, and he's got a lot of talent. I think he's going to have a great career here. And again, each guy is kind of goes on their own journey, and you never know how quickly they're going to acclimate. But he's done a really good job. Alex, fits well with the guys around him. I think he's probably the best catch and shoot guy on the team. He's got elite range. He's an elite shooter. Another guy I think is a hard-nosed kid. He's smart, cares about it, and all these guys have different strengths, which is why it's fluid. Really, when you get past the three returners, Josh Odom, it's fluid behind there because they all do different things well, and it may be that certain games, we're going to need certain skills, and it may be really a game-by-game, committee deal, and it may never get established. It may get established at some point where there's an established rotation. It just, I guess time will tell on that. But Alex is a guy that's elite shooter, and fits well with the guys around him. When you look at guys like Josh and Dorian and Scoot and Deshaun, like guys that can really play, make, get in the lane, and put pressure on the rim.
Well, and overall, just kind of assess the guards and how the team might look with the versatility of that group as a whole.
Well, I think it's a group with a lot of depth. I think kind of waiting on guys to establish themselves. But I like our flexibility. I like the versatility of the guys. I think we've got a number of guys that can do a lot of different things. You want to be able to. Obviously, the more versatile, the better, and we've got a number of guys, like we can play lineups with Deshaun and Scoot together because Scoot can play off the ball, and he has the size and strength to guard wings and at least twos, and his offensive game, he can do that, and Alex is 6'3", and the rest of those guys are in that 6'4", 6'5" range, and they can switch a lot of stuff. They have a high skill set. They can stretch the floor, space the floor, and all those guys do a pretty good job getting downhill to varying levels. So ultimately, I think it's a group where you look at it and you say, is there a lukewarm choice? We have a definitive All-American there? Probably not. But when you look at that group as an 8, a lot of depth, a lot of versatility, a lot of good players, a lot of competition, and should make for an interesting couple weeks here. And then certainly as we get in the season, like I said, it'll time will tell how it unfolds. But all those guys have a chance to play, and certainly I would expect 3 or 4 of them have kind of established themselves. The rest of it will unfold here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll know more leaving Butler in terms of where we stand rotation-wise.